Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs Podcast. It is Thursday, April 30th, 2026. I'm your host, George Kurt, joined by the one and only Cody Roadcap. How you doing today, Cody?
I'm doing all right, hanging in there, just like the Pistons are hanging on to for dear life on their 1-8 playoff matchup that they're about to blow, and just remind me of all the joys that come with being a Pistons fan. But hey, I saw your Flyers got an overtime dub to beat the Pittsburgh Penguins, so congrats on that.
Good day over here, sending you good vibes over there for a comeback in that series. I know, aren't you missing your best player from injury?
No, he's back.
No, he's
He dropped
back?
40. He dropped 45 points last night.
Wow. Okay.
So
Maybe we'll also have the Sixers get past the Celtics, and that'll be a great time.
hey, that'd be fun. But speaking of Philadelphia and Boston, if we want to just hit our 10 seconds of baseball, they both fired their managers. So let's talk about all the sports today.
Yeah, Philly's on the way to a sweep right after firing their manager, too. It's a great time.
So sports.
Yeah.
And
great
Calais
time.
Campbell is back for another year with the Baltimore Ravens. 40
And
years
bringing
old.
it right back around for football, and the place where I would expect him to go, because he's going to go somewhere familiar at this point in his career. And I'm not shocked. He's going to play until he's 55 at this point, right?
Hey, I mean, he's still playing at a high level for his age. I mean, he's not like the every down player, but the rotational guy. He's still making an impact. So shout out to him.
Exactly. All right. Bookkeeping first. Follow us at the Couch GMs on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok to get even more than you do from the show here. You can always DM us with any questions you've got, or join us live Thursday nights at 6:30 on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch to jump into the show as we go. We actually do have a fan question, but when we first hit, what's happening?
I was reading the question. I need a sec. There we go.
All right. For J Phil out there, just feel free to drop some rosters, some Dynasty rosters in here. That would be great. We can take a look as we get through the episode. This episode is going to be a Dynasty rookie mock draft, so right on brand with what we're talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're a week away from the NFL draft happening. I'm sure everybody has their grades that don't mean anything, their thoughts, the surprises, whether that was Ty Simpson going 13th overall to the Los Angeles Rams, the 49ers doing what the 49ers do and taking some questionable picks in the mid rounds, but now we might kind of buy into them in fantasy football. Just a good weekend in Pittsburgh. I mean, fun draft. Not the most talented draft class, but I think there were some good players to be found.
I think it was very defense heavy, which makes it feel like a worse draft class than it was, and we're going to see what kind of impact is made. Pittsburgh was involved in some, I don't know if you want to say controversy, but a fun time with trying to lock up pick 21 when they thought that the Cowboys were on the clock and realized the Eagles traded up to take their guy. That was a great time.
Yeah, I mean, I will see if it pans out. Guess that's why I don't call a person too early. It's also interesting that the Cowboys and Eagles would work together to, you know, get the Steelers, because it sounded
Do you
like
remember the last time the Cowboys and Eagles worked together on a trade on draft night?
I'm sure it was, I think it was Devonta Smith,
It
but
was Devontae Smith. So they do it for wide receivers, apparently.
so we'll see if how Mekhi Lemon pans out, where he goes in our mock draft coming up here. But speaking of Pittsburgh, if you want to throw a couple other news of what's happening in our semi-annual hashtag Rogers Watch.
Oh, good.
They put the I forget what the correct terminology is, the exclusive rights tag or something along the lines. Basically, at this point, Aaron Rodgers can only sign with the Steelers. If he signs somewhere else, the Steelers have the right to match it. And for why it's even more important is after the NFL draft, any free agent sign does not impact the comp formula, but because they've added this tag, it would potentially impact the comp formula if another team would assign him. So it sounds like what we've all thought all along, it's Steelers or bust. It is just time will tell if he is going to be there. But Mike Tomlin, on his first appearance on Sunday Night Football after the draft, said he expects Rodgers to play. So take that for whatever you want to view that for.
Well, has he gone in any darkness retreat yet? Have we heard anything from him? I know there was no visits on McAfee lately.
I mean, he was on McAfee a couple weeks ago, and he said he wasn't going to make a decision. He also talked about the activities he enjoys doing with his wife. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
I would also lean on the fact of if we haven't heard anything yet, I think I'm expecting him to be back. Is that good for the Steelers or not? Couldn't really tell you, but
It
we'll
definitely
see.
seems like he'll be back come training camp. So, like, miss all the offseason, just come back for training camp.
So I'm trying to think of like Jadeveon Clowney taking a page out of that book.
I mean, sure. I mean, Clowney, I think, is just more of like no one signs him until like
Well, that's
Rodgers
what he
could
wants
show
you
up
to think.
today, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know if anyone is out on the market right now going for. I think there's a price gap. I think David Clowney wants this amount of dollars. Teams are like, I'm not willing to spend this right after the draft. Let's get to training camp, see how these young guys do. Oh, now it's time to sign Jadeveon Clowney. I think that's where he's at in his career. Rodgers just like, I don't want to do offseason stuff. So I'm not going to sign. Then I don't get fined and I'll show up and play. And that's what I expect to happen.
Yeah. All right. You want to look at this Dynasty roster to get us in the mood a little bit here?
Yeah. Hit me.
All right. I'm sorry in advance because Nova's probably going to knock my camera and microphone out at least once. First roster, Drake May, Jalen Hurts at quarterback, Achane, Jonathan Taylor, Chase Brown, Woody Marks at running back. Receiver has Ibuka, Ladd, Garrett Wilson, Alec Pierce, Michael Wilson, and then has Fannin and Mark Andrews at tight end.
I think like from my first thought of this team is there is some solid pieces.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, I'm always like running back scare me. We saw Jonathan Taylor have a really big year last year. How does that translate? Achane's like your running backs are really good. Achane, Jonathan Taylor, love that. Chase Brown, Woody Marks. We don't know about Woody Marks now that David Montgomery's going to be there, but they're younger guys, so I like the balance there. Drake May looks like a stud. Jalen Hurts is a good fantasy quarterback because he runs touchdowns, so you got to like that. The wide receivers, though, there is where the question marks are. I would expect another step up from Ibuka. Can Ladd get back to that rookie year now that Keenan Allen isn't there? Garrett Wilson, he's with the Jets. That's tough. Alex Pierce got the big payday, and he's a young guy, so I like his upside. And same with Michael Wilson, a younger guy that is, came into his own last year. And then tight ends are tight ends. Fannin and Mark Andrews, they seem great. So, like, I don't know if this team is like, we're going to win a championship this year, but I think there's a lot of foundational pieces to, like, be competitive for the next couple of years.
Yeah, this feels like team coming out of a rebuild almost to me. I don't know where you are in your situation or if you just took over a team, but that's what it feels like to me with a lot of the young wide receivers that have a lot of value. I definitely think you can keep building wide receiver room talent, kind of like Cody said, but you have a very good foundation at running back, and you have a solid at least QB1 and QB2 to play in those bye weeks and fill in those gaps. So,
yeah, and I think if you could take a Jonathan Taylor, for instance, pair him with Garrett Wilson and go get yourself a stud wide receiver in a dynasty league, maybe not like a Devontae Adams because he's on the way out, but if you could go get an Amon-Ra St. Brown or maybe a Devonta Smith expecting a bigger upside. Like that's taking a little bit more of a flyer than to pair him with Jalen Hurts kind of thing. But to go get a true number one, I think that could balance the team out a little bit better.
Yeah, I do think if you want to make a splash move, that'd be the way to go. He did mention on here as well, he got second in that league 2 years ago and has 8th pick this year. Targets for that roster. I mean, we're going to go deeper into rookie rankings when we get into our mock, but there's definitely some
trade your pick,
potential upside wide receivers. Yeah.
If you're a pick 8, trade it. Use the value of a first-round pick. There's not that great of talent pool there. Pair that with one of those guys I mentioned. Maybe you don't have to give Jonathan Taylor then. Maybe it's just a first and Garrett Wilson can upgrade you at wide receiver.
Depends how plugged in his league mates are on how much they value a pick 8, but there's also a chance that like Concepcion or Cooper falls to 8 and someone really likes them for some reason, and then you get more value than you should. So maybe even the draft night trade or kind of holding on, see if you get value at that point if you don't have any interest before draft day.
Yeah, or if Fernando would fall and a team desperately needs a quarterback.
True.
But I think that
I feel like our league's quarterbacks are valued a little lower than some other dynasty leagues we've heard. But yeah.
Yeah, and I just think with I think anytime you throw a first round pick in there, the value question like automatically goes up. And I think it, and at pick 8 this year, that would be my advice, is trade the pick, pair one of your wide receivers, you know, a Garrett Wilson and Alec Pierce. Can you upgrade that position? That's what I would try to do.
I like it. If you want to throw a second roster up there, if anyone else has any other questions, Dynasty or for other fantasy related, please feel free to drop them in the comments. We'll mix them in. Any other actual draft talk before we jump in?
No, I mean, it wasn't as crazy as we thought at first, and then the second half of the first round got a bunch of trades.
The Bills traded 3 times, right?
49ers did. We got to a quarter of the league didn't make a first round pick this year. So those are the fun things to take away from it. And I mean, just in general, like I was a fan of the shorter first round. It was done in 3 hours. I know the broadcasters didn't like it because they couldn't get through all their packages, but I liked it.
I liked it too. I always felt like it drug on too far. And they still got plenty of time to talk about all their picks and even recap old picks when they got to days 2 and 3 anyway.
For sure.
All right. Why don't we hit up our Dynasty rookie mock draft? I don't think you have a bumper here.
Dude, I told you I was going to play a bumper.
Play a bumper. Nice with the music, too. I didn't expect that. That's cool. All right.
Yeah, I was ready.
We're going to do one round of a Dynasty rookie mock draft. I'm going to totally break Cody's screen.
Just let me drive.
You're welcome.
You host, I drive. It's the same thing we've been doing for 300 plus episodes.
Cool. Anyway, so we're going to do one round of a Dynasty rookie mock draft, and then we're going to kind of go through some guys maybe that aren't going in the first round that we like afterwards, but we're going to alternate our picks. If you aren't familiar with our color coding system, I am blue, Cody is green, so I'll be odd picks, Cody will be even, and we're going to hit 12 teams in this. Try to, I guess, keep it as close to, straight rankings as we can, I guess, because we don't have the actual teams in front of us for, like, who we're drafting for, but I know I'll have a couple of examples of, like, Dynasty teams that I have, and Cody, you'll probably have the same of, like, what would you do in this case?
Yeah, for sure. You got the first pick, though. You can start us off.
I do, and I think this is the easiest pick in the book because I think nothing's changed since before. It's going to be Jeremiah Love for me at pick 1.
Yeah, it's going to be Jeremiah Love. The landing spot wasn't great with the Cardinals because they need a lot of things. Like, I would expect a very similar rookie season to what we just saw out of Ashton Genty. Seemed like a home run 101. Team wasn't quite there. I think Genty's going to have a bigger year this year. It doesn't feel like a guy that's going to come back and impact me in, a major way in year 1. But if you have the 101 pick, you have to take him.
Exactly. We don't know what we're going to get out of Connor coming off of the major knee injury, though. So, yeah, there's going to be a split in there, but I don't know if it's going to be a complete bust year 1, but definitely best long term.
It's not just Connor. I mean, they have to move some.
They have 7 guys who didn't really impress you.
I mean, they have free agent acquisition Tyler Algier, who's already going to steal things. We're accustomed to that. Trey Benson, he's probably the guy that gets moved, the second round pick from going into his 3rd season. That still has some upside, but you mentioned Connor coming off the injury. So yeah, I mean, it's the 100% the right pick for dynasty drafts. We saw it with Ashton Genty last year. Was it 2 years ago? We saw it with this same Arizona Cardinals team with Marvin Harrison Jr. was the clear cut number 1, and that hasn't panned out very well just because the team around him. So there is like some, just manage expectations a little bit differently. These guys that are going 101 aren't your elite difference makers, and there wasn't a player that went to a team that is going to make that in this year's draft. So just manage your expectations well, and I think it's also gets even harder as we get more and more picks. That's why I'm like, if you can sell the value on a round 1 pick this year and get a player, I'm all for it.
Definitely. And I know you and I talking during the draft was just like, you said this draft stinks for fantasy because even some of the players we thought had such potential went to landing spots that they're either going to be handcuffed for a bit or just aren't on impressive offenses.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens when bad teams are picking at the top and continually picking over and over again. But, at number 2, we're going to start the wide receivers here.
Mm-hmm.
No surprise here. For me, I'm a Jordan Tyson guy. I've been a Jordan Tyson guy. I think in New Orleans, I know Chris Olave is there, but he has had his own injury concerns. So is Jordan Tyson. So maybe that scares you and you want to take a guy like Carnell Tate, a little bit more consistent. Might not be a true number 1 option, but he was the number 4 pick in the draft. He goes to Tennessee. He's competing with the likes of Calvin Ridley, Alec Iumenor. Those are the kind of guys he's competing with. There's potential there for him to break out. I know personally, I would go Jordan Tyson because that's my guy. But I think the most sensible pick for the mass public would be Carnell Tate.
And that's where you're locking in?
I think so. I just have a hard time with Carnell Tate. I'll be honest with you. I was not a huge fan of his coming out. I wasn't a huge fan of, I know Ohio State is wide receiver U at this point. They're putting out wide receivers left and right, whether that's JSN, reigning offensive player of the year. You had Emeka Ibuka, had a really strong breakout last year. Obviously, Garrett Wilson, we'll talk about, we've talked about in the past. But even like when Garrett Wilson came out, he wasn't my favorite target. Carnell Tate's not going to be my favorite target. He could go on to be really good just because the nature of the position, the landing spot, having an unknown at quarterback. So I'll go there.
I mean, I think it's a toss-up between the two for me as well. So before we jump back to another Dynasty team that we had dropped in the comments, I'll just make pick 3, and it's going to be Jordan Tyson for me. And I think I mentioned this before on the show, and Cody knows I have picks 1 and 3 in a Dynasty, and maybe that's not the best year to have it. But let me not be able to talk and type. Cool. I think after that top 3 to 5, depending on who you like, it's kind of a drop-off. The only question I have for you, and I want to see how you would play it and maybe give some advice to others out there. I'm a team who, if I have Jordan Tyson fall to me at 3, I feel like I kind of have to take him. But I have Chris Olave on my roster. Do you just take the value regardless, or are you worried about that 2 receivers on the same team?
That is a tough one because you have Chris Olave, who is not locked up long-term in New Orleans. So there's a potential this could be his last year. Could he, be replaced with... I think there is enough talent gap between him and the next guy, which in that, whether that's a Jadarian Price or a Mekhi Lemon, I think there's a tier break here. So I think I would still take that. This is Dynasty. This is not a 1-year move. This is a long-term situation. And I think I'm comfortable taking that. I mean, Tyler Shuck averaged over 250 passing yards a game. He's going to throw the ball. So whether it's Olave, Tyson, I think someone's going to be on the recipient of it. And I'm okay taking him over the other 2.
That's kind of where I'm leaning to, and we'll see if anything changes closer to draft day. But thank you for that advice. And why don't we throw up another comment? Yep. So Jay Phil's other team you wanted some advice on. He's got Drake May and Trevor Lawrence in this league at quarterback. His running backs are Hampton, James Cook, Dowdle. And then receivers, Ted McMillan, J. Jeff, T. Higgins, Pickens, Devontae Adams, tight ends, Kraft, and Ferguson. That was a winning roster last year, and he has picked 110.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely looks like a winning roster, but what I like about this one is it's also like built for the future. So you have your Omarion Hampton, you have your Ted McMillan, you still have young Justin Jefferson, who honestly was probably your worst receiver last year on this list. And that just says a lot about your team. So I like this team obviously better than the last one. I think it's a little bit more well balanced. You have the star wide receivers, whether that's a Jefferson, a Devontae Adams or a Pickens. They both put up, great numbers last year. I expect that to go forward. Same thing. I mean, we'll talk about here in a couple minutes, like the guys around pick 10. They're going to be like flyer, potential guys that maybe you stay in pick. But again, if you could you swing a Devontae Adams in a first round pick to get a younger stud? Like, I don't know. I don't think it's going to get you like a Puka or a JSN or maybe not even Amon-Ra St. Brown, but like, could you do something, or maybe a first and a T Higgins, right? for someone like that. Uh, and then the only other thing I would look at is maybe upgrade the running back too. If you could get your first round pick for, and let's throw T Higgins in there for Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't think that's enough. So the guy might not do it, but maybe they're a Bengals fan. You never know. But if you could get a high end wide running back like that situation or something like that, I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Yeah, I think running back depth is my biggest problem with this roster because you don't think Dowdle's going to, just pop out there and do what he did last year. But with Hampton and Cook, you're at least still too deep. And in some Dynasty leagues, I know you only have to play one or couldn't even play no running backs. But seeing that you won with this, you have Tet, who was a rookie last year. Jefferson probably didn't even see your starting lineup most of the time, depending on how deep your team is, your starting roster is. I think you're still in very good shape. And even if you do not get good value for that pick 10 and just want to sit in there and pick, maybe you take a tight end that falls down there or you take a flyer. And I feel good about taking a flyer when you have a pretty set team like this and you just kind of hope something pans out to help you out.
Yeah. I wouldn't even be afraid to offer your, first round pick to one of your middle teams pick next year. See if they can get excited about somebody. Might be hard, but I think next year's draft is going to be better. Jump ahead
That's
of it.
true.
That's the point of playing Dynasty.
First round pick this year and take 2 first round picks next year. Yeah.
Yeah. Something like that.
See if someone would bite on it. I like it. Good job. Good advice there, Cody. And I think that also puts you back on the clock at pick 4 with Love, Tate, and Tyson off the board.
Yeah, and I think that this is where team needs start to come into play. If you need a running back, I think it's okay to go Jadarian Price here. If you need a wide receiver, I think you go Mekhi Lemon here. Mekhi Lemon's going to wear number 9 because he got Nick Foles' blessing. I didn't think Nick Foles was the kind of player that you needed his blessing. I know he went on a pretty good run. Well, I didn't know we were holding number 9, but
I don't think we're holding number 9. I think it's just one of those things that no one was taking number 9 because he was the first to get a Super Bowl for Philly, and it was just like a respect thing.
Yeah, crazy. Anyways, I'm a wide receiver dude, so I'm going to go Mekhi Lemon. He, again, not one of my favorite wide receivers, but he's a big slot. He can make stuff happen. He's hard to tackle. Can he pair well with Devonta Smith, Dontavian Wicks, Jalen Hurts in that offense? TBD.
I mean, if they run a more Packer-style offense from last year, I think that slot receiver will be very important for them, and he could have a big hit. I know there's still questions also about, how long Hurts could even be there because there's people going crazy on that one. But I still think if AJ ends up staying for some ridiculous reason, you're going to definitely have the delay on return on value for Mekhi Lemon, but he's going to be a productive receiver at some point, I would imagine.
Yeah, we'll see. Like I said, for me, like I talked about during the draft, like it was like Jordan Tyson or bust for me. I'm sure some of these guys will be great players. Like I know that but there's no one that excites me. Like I don't know if the gap between like for me, the gap between Jordan Tyson and Mekhi Lemon is bigger than Mekhi Lemon and Denzel Scott. Casey Concepcion. Like I think they're closer. So
yeah,
I would hate pick 4. It's just what I'm saying. Like I feel like I missed out, and now I'm starting here's where we're at.
See, I don't think I would hate pick 4 as much, and that's because I would probably take Jadarian Price there because there's carries to be had in Seattle. I think he's a pretty good comp to what they had in Ken Walker, and he has a chance to jump right in and be successful. So I'm taking him at pick 5. And if I am a team at pick 5, he's kind of the guy I think I'm hoping falls to me, especially if you have one even potential spot at running back. And I could be way overselling it. I got super hype on Seattle running backs way too many times in the past and then just saw their split make me absolutely rip my hair out. But
I do love that you said Ken Walker. There's carries to be there. And obviously they won the Super Bowl on the backs of Ken Walker, who's Super Bowl MVP.
Yep.
But in terms of the fantasy season, I wanted to pull your hair out.
Yeah.
So I
Something
agree.
still gives me hope that they're not going to completely overfeed the other backs that don't deserve it in their backfield, but they're going to.
I mean, that's
I'm
just the league.
a glutton for punishment.
I mean, that is the league that we live in, right? Like, it's multiple running backs get multiple touches and whatnot. So, yeah, and I think you're 100% valid. And I think I said that too. If running back's more of a need at Team 4, take Price over Lemon for sure. Like, we talk a lot of tiers, and we have the 3. You could even say 1, 2, then 2 if you wanted to. Like, there's a tier break between Lemon and Price, between Tyson and Tate for me. There's probably a tier break before Jordan Love, or excuse me. There's definitely tier break between Jordan Love, but he's not being drafted. Jeremiah Love. Sorry, the LaFleur brothers both got their J Loves, man. I don't know how to keep them straight anymore.
Okay. Quick trade question. Adams and it was 110 we're talking about. For Luther Burden, is that an overpay?
The
value of 110 right now?
I think this is how you'd have to, if you want to repeat, it's probably not worth it. If you want to be competitive and then maybe Burden breaks out, go for it. I know I'm wearing a Packers G right now. There's Packers G's behind me. Luther Burden was my favorite wide receiver in the draft last year. I hated that he went to Chicago. He was really good when he got the opportunities. They don't have DJ Moore. So that I like the idea of going after Luther Burden. But I wonder if you can get him for a second in Adams and then still keep your first and move that or something like that. I wouldn't start with a first in Adams for Burden. I don't mind giving up the older Adams for a Burden in a dynasty situation, but I wouldn't start with a first.
I feel like I can't complain there, and I'm so torn on Burden. I was never as hot on him as you were. But then on top of the fact he had such a great start and then fell off, but it seemed like injury might have had something to do with that, that if that really was the case, he has a chance to come right out and, set the whole world on fire for the whole season. It's a lot of risk, and I do think if you're in a win-now situation like you are, I think it almost is safer to say stick with Adams or try to do that for a second.
Or drop Adams and just offer the first.
Probably wouldn't happen. First and a second next year.
I don't know. I mean, we're talking a lot of upside, and Burden was a borderline first-round pick last year.
Fair.
One in that same range. Obviously, the
I
class
guess, yeah,
was
if
better.
you look at it, it's like Burden or some of those guys down there at 110, you probably like Burden better.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, could you keep him? I'm trying to scroll back to look at your team real quick, but like yeah. I would try to I would drop Adams and do the first. If he says he wants a player, then maybe do like Adams and not your first. I still think
Adams in the first feels like a little bit of an overpay.
Yeah, and I know we're saying the draft, wasn't great for Dynasty. This feels like a weak rookie class, but like in Dynasty football, first round picks still hold a ton of value.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I would just, get rid of those unless you're like super convicted, man. Like, don't let me talk you out of it. If like Burden's your favorite player ever, like go get your favorite player. It makes fantasy more fun.
Amen to that. Sometimes I feel like we take it a little too seriously, so that's good. Back to our draft. First 6 picks were Love, Tate, Tyson, Lemon, and Price. And Cody said there is a clear tier break here. So who do you have at pick 6?
So this is where I'm just going to take Fernando because we got to get him in here somewhere. So I'm going to take the cop out of taking him now. Obviously, if you're team 6 and you have a quarterback, don't take Fernando. But that's where I'm going to take him.
All right. Cool. See, I was hoping you would not do that so I could take the cop-out pick because right here, it's like, do I want a receiver from Cleveland? Do I want another receiver from Cleveland? Do I want a receiver from New York? Do I want a tight end from New York? None of this sounds great. The name's completely out of the picture. It doesn't matter. I think my flyer at pick 7 in this case is going to end up being Casey Concepcion, and I don't love it.
Hey, you said flyer. You need a speed deep threat.
That's fair. That is very fair.
Look, I'm
totally
not
spelled it wrong too. Go ahead.
I'm not falling for the hype that Cleveland has had another good draft and they are finally going to be good because they just need competent quarterback play. And whether that's
they don't
Shedeur,
have one on the roster.
I think Shedeur can be competent. Deshaun Watson, we don't need to talk about that, but he's probably going to get the start. So, but they have the defense. They had a really good draft class last year. The rookies come in strong. They seem to have a really good draft class on paper this year. Can they go 2 for 2 and finally get back to being competitive, or does Todd Monken just run this team into the ground? TBD. So I too would have went Casey Concepcion there. Maybe I know he's a little bit lower because he went in the second round. There was a lot of buzz around Denzel Boston. They're closer to me than I think like the rankings on the internet or your platform might be.
Doesn't help they both went to Cleveland though.
Right, and that's the same thing we have Omar Cooper Jr. and Kenyon Sadiq, right? Like,
yeah,
players I like on the Jets, and whether that's Smith, heck, I think I saw they were bringing Russell Wilson in for a visit. So like, who's going to be playing there? But for me, at team 8, again, I'm going to throw in Omar Cooper Jr. because he is the slot guy that can make plays. So he has the ability to take a 15-yard in and turn it into a 40-yard reception. It's not as relying on the quarterback to get yards. He has the ability to do that there. So I'm going to take the flyer on him at pick 8.
I don't mind it. Like you said, flyer, and that's kind of where we're at here. He really was a toss-up, I think, between those two for me at pick 7. And I almost feel like after we get done with this draft, if you can even probably throw in Fernando because of the quarterback do you need him situation, we can probably look and be like, teams 6 through 10, you can convince me any order.
Yeah, probably. For sure.
With that being said, team 9, with me on the clock, I'm going to go with the first tight end. I'm going to take Kenyon Sadiq.
Yeah.
One of those things where, like, he's a very talented player. He might be one of the more talented pass catchers in the draft, and I'm really struggling at typing. Normally this is Cody's problem. But at least at tight end, I can convince myself, like, if he's not fantastic, he's probably still going to be a startable tight end. And if he's great, you're getting a big leg up at a position that not many people have a good one of.
Yeah, and you went Sadiq, so I'm going to throw in Denzel Boston here. The other Cleveland guy, if you're at pick 10, you're hoping that you got it right, and the person at pick 7 didn't, and you got the rookie that's going to break out.
And yeah, I think looking at this now, any team 6 through 10, you can convince me any order. So that's pretty much on point. It stinks some of the landing spots for some of these guys.
I do think there is some fun potential players in like round 2 that like if you just want to buy into, and we're going to talk about some of like our round 2-3 guys depending on how deep we're just not going to do a full mock draft after we do these last 2 picks, and maybe you have to reach here a little bit early at the end of round 1 and just secure the guy that you want to buy into. And I think in this year's draft class that's okay.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And that's why, like, pick 11, it might not be the most talented player at this position, but I think this one's good landing spot. So I'm going to sneak ahead, and I'm going to take Jonah Coleman, running back for Denver, at the pick 11 spot.
Yeah, this is just like chasing RJ Harvey last year, hoping it works out better.
Yeah, I mean, I have no argument to that.
It's another crowded backfield. You're just hoping and praying. So
yeah, pretty much. There's nobody that has broken out, so he's going to get an opportunity at some point, like Harvey ended up doing. Um, if you told me Harvey started the year and didn't do well, I wouldn't be shocked at all. There's going to be a point where Coleman gets some looks, and you just got to hope that it works out for him. And if it doesn't, they're going to be in a messy committee, and then you're going right back to the drawing board. I guess the good news is if you're picking at 11 and a 12 team, you already probably have a solid squad, and you're just trying to find somebody to help push you over the top. If you're picking at pick 11, but it's 201, maybe you take a different approach to this. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think 12-team leagues are the most popular in fantasy football, so I think that's a good way to look at it. And I also think, there is the potential that RJ Harvey, finds his footing in year 2 and just becomes the lead guy. We don't know. That's the fun part about fantasy football. So, I mean, I probably think Coleman would have been my pick there. I don't know if I would have bought in on the Eli Stowers replacing Dallas Goedert buzz to put him as a second tight end in the top first round, but he's one of those guys in, the later or the second round that I think could be a lot of fun. So Coleman makes a ton of sense. I am the last pick of our first round, and I do have a question.
Yep.
Whether you're team 11 or 12, I would say, I don't have the numbers here, but I would say there's a solid chance that maybe a one Mr. Matthew Stafford was your quarterback based off of last year. Because we're talking Dynasty, any interest if you're one of these teams with Matt Stafford to take a Ty Simpson?
I don't hate it. This almost has to be like evaluate how your league usually drafts quarterbacks, especially if you've been in a league with a lot of the same guys for a while. I know there's some years where it seems like quarterbacks go really high in our league and sometimes they don't. I do feel like there's a lot of cases where if someone's not going to be a starting quarterback, they won't get drafted high. And then you hope that he falls down to you in round 2, or maybe you just like trade up a round 2 pick and you're able to use your first round pick on something else. Or maybe even trade down from pick 12 down to somewhere else if you can. But I think that has to be a possibility if you're Stafford and then don't have depth behind it. But I feel like if you're Stafford and have a decent QB2 who could, be a QB1 in a year or two if Stafford's gone, I don't know if I would waste the draft value here on that one.
But that would just put you back in the same spot. Like, because Simpson's not playing with Stafford. You're basically like redshirting him, holding him as a roster spot, which makes it tough depending on how your league is set up for sure. But if you have a guy behind Stafford that might be, let's say a Drake May, right? That's probably even better. Let's not use him because he had his breakout this year. Let's say Caleb Williams.
Okay.
He had a strong end of last year. Could he be a guy that's a potential breakout every week starter, or maybe even a Jaden Daniels, resurgence kind of thing? And then Stafford retires, you're still going to be looking for that number 2 quarterback. You might have them in the wings with Ty Simpson. So I think it's worth mentioning. I like the idea of trading back. I'm not taking him here with the 12th pick. This is probably a little higher than he is going, but I wanted to talk about him. I'm taking Chris Bell, wide receiver out of Louisville from Miami. This is one of the guys that if you're at the top of the second round that I'm paying attention to. He's coming off an ACL injury. They're hopeful that he's ready. He did it in November of last year, so they're hopeful he's ready for the start of the season. He had first-round talent but fell because of the injury. Miami needed a wide receiver, so it feels like a really good pick, a sneaky pick at the end of round 1.
I agree with that. He was going to be one of the first people I mentioned as a round 2 value, and I think there's a couple of round 2 values that I'm intrigued in. So if he ends up going end of round 1, would not mind it. I guess when it comes to a lot of those guys that we haven't taken off the board yet, immediate chance at value, he probably is top of the bunch or near the top of the bunch just because they got rid of everybody and he still has a decent quarterback in place.
Yeah, for sure.
So I like it. I don't mind it. Maybe it's only a bit of a reach. I mean, if you look at Fantasy Pros big board right now, which is obviously still adjusting to everything, he's only picked 4. He's average 14. So it's not that much of a reach.
No, I like that as well. Before we do some flyers, our friend Jay Phillip had another Dynasty question. He was talking about his one league that he has an offer that if he He would give up T. Higgins, Devontae Adams, pick 110 for Jamar Chase.
Ooh. That seems rich, but it is Jamar Chase.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I think I would do it. I mean, let's take out 110 and say T. Higgins, Adams, and Denzel Boston, or T. Higgins, Adams, and Jonah Coleman, right? Or heck, throw in Sadiq, whichever one you want to pick. One of the people we just picked 9 through 11 for Jamar Chase, the guy that's going to go top 3 in all the redraft leagues years, probably multiple first-round picks.
Played well with or without Burrow.
Did well with Joe Flacco. Like, I think I would do it because it also gets rid of the T. Higgins, Jamar Chase thing. So, like, I'm not going to tell you, like, ooh, can you save Higgins? But then that just puts 2 players on the same team.
Yeah,
I think I would do it.
Age, that's basically similar to Higgins. Adams, if you're looking long term, which I mean, you're a win now team, but Adams has a few more years of viability, and then he's done.
Would you rather do, like we talked about, would you rather do this trade where you give up a bunch, or say Adams and his second round pick for Luther Burden?
I'd probably rather take the stud with Chase.
What if it was just the first round pick for Luther Burden?
Then I would probably go Burden.
Because then you would keep Adams and Higgins?
Yeah, I'd keep the depth. Give yourself a little bit more security.
I mean, it's not every day you get an offer for Jamar Chase, though. That's kind of where
I know. The only problem with this trade is you're dropping a lot of depth. And I mean, I still think that 1 in the first round pick, rings out, even if when you fill in Sadiq, Boston, Coleman, etc., who could be there, it doesn't seem as great as it does on paper. You are losing some depth by getting rid of whoever you take with that pick and then trading 2 receivers also for 1. But you obviously can't be afraid of injuries too. And as a win now team, to be able to add Jamar Chase to that squad.
So let me just read you this team if he does this deal. Just maybe it'll change your mind because we're talking about depth. So it would be Drake May, Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, running back still the question marks: Amarian Hampton, James Cook, Rico Dowdle.
Yep. Still
wide receivers with this trade: Tet McMillan, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, George Pickens, Tucker Kraft, Jake's.
Still 4 deep. The fact that you could start J. Jeff and Jamar Chase in a dynasty, and I mean, I still have to imagine J. Jeff's going to rebound to some point. Yeah. Okay.
I think I've talked myself into this. I'm doing this, and I'm okay doing this.
Power.
And if this is like a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, I don't know what your settings are, and you can only play 3, and you could flip a Pickens for a low end running back and a mid tier wide receiver or something like that. I might look at that just to build back up the depth, but you have a solid 4 there. I would do this. Hopefully you do. Let us know.
Yeah. All right. I like it. All right. So our first round of our mock draft, we had Jeremiah Love, Cornell Tate. Pick 3 was Jordan Tyson, then Mekhi Lemon, Jadarian Price, Fernando Mendoza to pick 6. 7 went Casey Concepcion, and then Omar Cooper, Kenyon Sadiq to 9, Denzel Boston, Jonah Coleman, and the first round wrapped up with Chris Bell. You and I both, I think, have some guys in the second round, at least early, maybe even later, that we think have some solid upside. So what are a couple of guys you're looking out for beyond round 1 in Dynasty?
Yeah, I would expand this past round 2. But I'll start with the guys that I am looking at. The first name that comes to mind, it's a player I liked, would be Emmett Johnson. Obviously went to Kansas City. They just signed Ken Walker, so he's already there. But Ken Walker has some injury history in this past. I like Emmett Johnson a lot. Could he be the Zach Charbonnet to that could be startable, even with Ken Walker? Obviously different teams, different situations. But he is one of those guys in the middle of the second round that I'm paying attention to.
I like it. I'll stick on the running back train for now, and I'll talk about both the Penn Staters that have shots to win jobs if they perform well, and that's Nick Singleton going to Tennessee, and then Katron Allen going to Washington. Washington, obviously, once they traded away their starting running back, they were in a very messy committee last year, and no one really separated themselves from the bunch. Chris Rodriguez was fine down the stretch, but fine is probably the best you would say about it. So the job's open for the taking. And then Nick Singleton is probably going to slot in as a backup to start, but he's the more talented back of the bunch, I would say. And then he's just fighting there to see if he can get a starting job going forward.
Yeah, the only thing that scares me with like Singleton is he was a guy I really liked. I thought he'd be a good RB2 to pair with. And I do think like he has some limitations that while he might at the end of the year, start to beat out a Tony Pollard, but that's because they're going to move on. And they might be drafting a running back in the second round or first round next year, depending on how they finish, or going after one in free agency. And he's still back to being, obviously you can't go into it with the mindset of, they might replace him in a year. Like that's not the goal, but just something that's in the back of my mind that I figured I would pass on for you guys. If we transition to the wide receiver, Ted Hurst, wide receiver out of Georgia State, small school guy, high upside. Obviously Tampa Bay, they have, McMillan, Abuka, Godwin. Doesn't matter.
Goodwin was a throwback right there. Nice.
But it doesn't matter. But I think he has that high upside potential as like might be a guy that a la a Jalen McMillan, who didn't have the strongest start, but then came on strong in the second half of the season as he got worked more into the offseasons. And I don't think the players they have, whether that's Godwin on his way out, McMillan, Abuka, I think is going to try to step into the, number one role that Mike Evans is leaving as much as possible, but they could find a number two. And with Baker Mayfield there, they've been able to support two wide receivers before. So Ted Hurst is another name I'm paying attention to.
I'm still like trying to remind myself that Evans is gone there because we were worried last year with bringing in Abuka. It's like there's so many mouths to feed in that offense, but no, there's a chance that Hurst can, pull in a good amount of work. So I don't mind that pull. I'm going to jump back further up the board, and I have to mention Jeremy Bernard, who went to Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh had a total of 0.5 wide receivers last year that were competent. It was a halftime DK Metcalf work in there. And then there's number two receiver was a receiving back.
Yeah, the only thing I would say about him was they also traded for Michael Pittman, and I think Bernard and Pittman are a very similar player type. Fair. So that's what scares me about that one. But they need pass catchers. You're not wrong there.
And
if it's Will Howard,
downside about it, yes, is it Will Howard
or Drew Aller?
Is it Drew Aller? Or if it is Rodgers, what happens next year? Like, there is uncertainty long term, and I mean the downside is Bernard is it's going closer to like earlier to mid second round, so the value is higher. But I do think the talent's there, so it's just going to depend on how the wide receiver room shakes out and what his quarterback production's like over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and speaking of quarterbacks, if you're way past, I mean I think you have to in the back of your mind think Drew Aller with no Rodgers potentially, or Carson Beck. Could he beat out a Jacoby Brissett? These are your late round flyer options in your dynasty leagues, 3rd, 4th round, 5th round, if you go that deep in dynasty. I know every league's a little bit different, that it might be worth, adding a quarterback late just to be safe, unless you have a weird rule where you can only hold 3, because then, some people get angry.
And Marcus is not in this episode because...
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about, man. I'm not calling shots about anybody.
No? Okay. Never mind me. I have 2 more later wide receivers that I'm kind of keeping an eye on. One of them, I'll say the one I'm not as excited about first. That's Jacoby Lane in Baltimore. You always wonder if a receiver in Baltimore is going to come in there and make noise, and they've not been able to establish really anybody outside of Zay Flowers last year finally really starting to take a stride. So you wonder if he can come in there and win like a number 2 gig. But Deshaun Stribling in San Francisco, because they never replaced Jawan Jennings. There's going to be targets to be had there. There's always receivers moving in and out to injury. Ayuk's probably going to be off the roster in one way or another very shortly. At least some opportunity in the later, like 3rd round, to go out there and just get someone a shot.
Yeah. I mean, top of the 3rd round for a Stribling is kind of where he is going. I mean, that's where he went on the draft day, and that was definitely a reach by consensus, but who cares about consensus? We don't even have that debate. To your Baltimore thing, I like Elijah Surratt better than Jacoby Lane, but to each their own. If they're going to go for
at that late in the draft,
Surratt's going to end of round 2. So
yeah, fair.
But you mentioned Deshaun Stribling. I think he's an interesting one. He's like their Deebo Samuel replacement, like the way he plays, just a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit faster. So I think he's the guy that has the potential to be like boom or bust, but I don't think there's any more boom or bust prospect than Kalen Black, the running back San Francisco also took. Between Stribling and Black, they were getting roasted for how early they took these picks. And Kalen Black could either be, what was his name? Tyrion Davis-Price, third-round running back that everyone thought was going to be the next big thing in San Fran. Or maybe it's a couple rounds early, but it's the Elijah Mitchell. Didn't pan out. Or the Jordan Mason. Mason's doing his thing in Minnesota. Elijah Mitchell, injury caught up to him, and he didn't pan out. So there's a lot of unknowns. But, if you talk about the current rankings of where they're at on Fantasy Pros, Kalen Black is down at 34. I don't know if there's some other players that I would definitely I would take Black over as the flyer upside, because it's probably the down year for Christian McCaffrey, and San Fran running backs know how to get points.
I mean, if you really want to try to sell me on Christian McCaffrey, he's not going to play a lot, which is not a hard sell. He probably is the next guy up. I mean, there's Isaac Guerrero still in the building who had his flashes, but you definitely saw him wear down. You're never going to get me to say no on drafting a late San Francisco running back, because there's so many times that we've seen those guys stepping in an injury and all of a sudden they're just a stud. So love your bringing up the name, and I definitely get the idea of taking him sooner than he is at the 34th on the consensus board, because down there you're grasping at straws, and I'll grasp at a straw that's hit 5 times already.
Yeah, so my only other player that I want to mention, I mean, there's a lot of tight ends that went. There was a lot of tight ends that went in round 2. There was actually a run on them that surprised a lot of people. It was a big to draft run blocking tight ends. However, with that said, Justin Jolly, the tight end, while he is known for his physical blocking, he does have some run after the catch ability. And I think he went to a spot in Denver that there's not a ton of tight end competition around him. So there is a chance that he could, break out a little bit. I don't expect him to ever be like a super high end tight end by any means, but could he do what AJ Barner did last year? Sure.
That's fair. And I think Cody and I could keep going back and forth, throwing names out there and talking all night if we wanted to, but
I'm done.
Start to wind it down. Yeah. I'm also done. Couple of guys even further up towards the first round we didn't mention. If there's anybody you have questions on, or even hypothetical trades, even if we're off the air, we're still here. Hit us in the DMs. Give us a follow.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that was George's cue for me to hit this music as we wrap up here. Another one of those episodes where it was like, oh man, I think this will be quick. We're only doing one round. How are we gonna fill some time? And here we are, 53 minutes in, and still counting till we made it. And all those good things. Like George mentioned, follow us on social medias at the Couch GMs, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, all those good places. Hit us with the DMs. We are still live every week in the offseason, Thursdays, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Come join the conversation. I'm Cody Roadcap. That's George Kurth. We'll talk to you all next week.